I've just spent the past month with the world's most powerful phone. This is the ASUS ROG Phone 9 Pro, and it's an absolute beast. It's faster on paper than the computer I'm using to edit this video. It creams the iPhone 16 Pro Max in graphical benchmarks, and though this is a gaming phone, it comes with software that's actually optimized for a Western audience that you can actually do regular smartphone things with as well, and a camera that, while not pro level, is surprisingly great. So I've been using the flagship ASUS ROG Phone 9 Pro Edition for around a month, and in that time I've come to appreciate how this absolute unit with its 24 gigs of RAM and terabyte of storage can not just provide power for demanding games on tap, but pretty much everything else you might want out of a high-end handset as well. Because of course this is one of the first Snapdragon 8 Elite phones that we've tested. So let's jump in and see what's great and perhaps not so great about the ASUS ROG Phone 9 Pro. Now look, the design of this thing is barely any different to last year's ROG Phone 8, but that's not a bad thing. The decoration around the back riffs on some of ASUS's gaming laptop designs with matte glass that ASUS calls a crystallized nano texture. It manages a pleasant soft touch feel while being pretty eye-catching at the right angle. That's paired with some tasteful branding, including a fun little GLHF up in the top camera module, and the red accent here is your biggest clue that you're indeed looking at the newer ROG model as opposed to its 2023 predecessor. But it wouldn't be a gaming phone without LEDs, and ASUS's Anime system takes this idea to the next level with a new 648 dot matrix located on the rear of the device. Kinda like the cover display in some foldables, there are some basic data readouts that you can pin to the display in a carousel arrangement, and even add your own little custom animations if you like. And when you're using the camera, you get a fun little smiley face to tell the other person that you're taking a photo. And there are even a handful of fun little basic arcade-style games that you can play on this rear display using the ASUS Air triggers to go left and right. Retro monochrome gaming aside though, this is 100% an aesthetic feature with very little practical use, but you know what? I still kinda like it, and if you don't, then disabling it is as simple as tapping a quick settings shortcut. Otherwise, this is a big, chunky, substantial feeling phone, though even with ASUS's advanced cooling tech and extra thick slice of battery contained within, it's actually a few grams lighter than the S24 Ultra and no heavier than Apple's iPhone 16 Pro Max. So I like the design and the hand feel. It's a gamer phone, no doubt, but it can also masquerade as a serious business-like smartphone when you don't have those LEDs turned on. If you know ASUS's Republic of Gamers pedigree, then you'll also know that these phones are all about performance, crank up to the very extreme in any given generation. And given that this year's flagship Qualcomm SoC is more powerful than ever, a multi-generational leap, that makes the ROG Phone 9 Pro the standard bearer for flagship performance going into 2025. Let's get some basic specs out the way before we dig a little deeper. You've got a Snapdragon 8 Elite running the show, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 storage in the base model ROG 9 Pro, or in the Pro Edition model I have here, 24 gigs of RAM plus 1 terabyte storage, though this may vary depending on where you buy it. Battery gets a welcome bump up to 5800 mAh, taking it well beyond the previous generation of Android flagships, with the same 65-watt fast charging via the bundled PD brick, in addition to 15-watt wireless charging. And the chassis once again is IP68 rated for water and dust resistance, so all your table stakes hardware features are taken care of there. The display, that is the one around the front that isn't a basic dot matrix, is a flat OLED panel behind Gorilla Glass Victus 2 with near symmetrical borders. You need to look really close to see there is a fraction of a millimeter thicker down below here. Really doesn't bother me though, and with peak brightness levels of 2500 nits, it's more than up to the task of shining even in bright outdoor conditions. ASUS isn't chasing the super high peak localized brightness levels of 4000 plus nits that are being claimed by some rivals, but instead leaning into higher refresh rates with a new 185Hz peak that can be enabled in some titles. Most of the time you'll be running at 120Hz though, and honestly, my eyes have a hard time telling the difference in anything above 120 anyway. But what I can say is this is a fantastically responsive screen. Like other ASUS tuned displays that I've used, the default colors are a little more punchy and saturated than usual, but this is tweakable in the settings if you want. Also, as you'd expect from a big beastly gaming phone, excellent haptics, providing sharp vibrational feedback even when you're not playing. Equally, audio is loud, clear, and decently bassy, with the low end in particular impressing compared to the Pixel 9 Pro and iPhone 16 Pro Max. That's one part of the experience you'd hope a gaming phone wouldn't flub, and ASUS really delivers, along with a headphone jack. How about that? If you have a big pair of studio headphones, you'll find the internal DAC here is more than up to the task of powering them. Benchmarks don't matter to most folks doing everyday smartphone things, but they are fun for bragging rights and testing the extremes of what the hardware is capable of. And the ROG Phone 9 Pro lives up to the extensive hype around its chip, with Geekbench scores roundly beating the iPhone's A18 Pro in multi-core and coming close to matching it in single-core performance. Graphically speaking though, it's not even close. Using the 3D Mark solar-based stress test on both the iPhone and ROG Phone 9 Pro, you can see the iPhone not only scores lower, but also quickly throttles down after around 3 cycles and stays at that lower level for the entire test run. The ROG phone maintains much higher performance level over time, though admittedly at the cost of becoming noticeably warmer to the touch after that 20-minute torture test. Outside of benchmarks though, I have to say I didn't notice anything untoward going on with thermal performance in this phone, even during extended play sessions, a testament to ASUS's GameCool thermal system internally that's designed to keep heat away from your fingers even when you're not using the Aero Cooler accessory. Obviously your mileage will vary depending on what you play and how long you play it for, but thankfully I didn't experience any of the extreme heat that some other users had reported from, for example, Realme's GT7 Pro, another early Snapdragon 8 Elite device. Here you can see me, for example, playing Mad Out 2 while managing to not burn my fingers. Now, battery capacity has obviously gotten a big bump this year as part of the trend that's due to continue as more Snapdragon 8 Elite phones come to market. And in day-to-day use, I've found absolutely nothing wanting from the 9 Pro in this area. Easily more than 1 day of use per charge, even when I was dropping into a cheeky game session throughout the day and using the camera to snap 100 or so photos while out on 5G. A lot of self-described gaming phones come with heavily customized builds of Android that often don't feel like they were really designed for Western markets. ASUS's software though comes with the option of either a customized ASUS UI with optional skins to make it look more, well, gamery, or my preference, which is a much closer to vanilla Android experience, pretty much what you would get out of a Google Pixel, save for the Google secret sauce. Though you do get ASUS's handy selection of shortcut bars and windowed multitasking features that other brands also offer, but which isn't yet part of stock Android. Oh, and it's now running Android 15, though with only 2 years of guaranteed platform updates, which disappointingly puts ASUS far behind the competition as more and more brands are pushing into the 5 to 7 year range. Security patches are still promised of 5 years for what that's worth. The rest of what's new in ASUS software has to do with AI, and this is also kind of a mixed bag. There's the standard stuff like AI wallpapers, AI recording, transcription and summaries, which we've had for a while in other phones, and AI call translation, which is a bit more frictionless than when I first used it a year ago on the ROG 8, but still struggles to tell the difference between a turkey and a turkey. Context-aware AI search is now available in the ASUS Gallery app, which is helpful if you use that app, I guess, but less so if you rely on Google Photos across multiple devices like I do. And there are also AI features to help with actual gameplay in some titles. Though the opportunity to try this didn't really present itself in my time with the ROG 9, you can use AI to detect certain elements in text on screen and assist with, for example, picking up in-game items or even searching the web based on in-game text if you get stuck. Not too sure how I feel about that, could potentially be verging into sort of cheating territory for you to apply to multiplayer titles, but it is technically quite impressive. The ROG 9 Pro's camera experience is largely a repeat performance of last year's pretty competent shooter from the ROG 8 Pro, which you may remember also carried over to the decent but largely forgettable Zenfone 11 Ultra. The main sensor is a new Sony LYT700, the same size as the old IMX890, though a refreshed part with a new gimbal now capable of compensating for up to 5 degrees of motion, up from 3 degrees before. Ultra-wide and selfie cameras are unchanged from the previous generation, as is the dependable but unremarkable 3x 32 megapixel telephoto. If you go into this camera expecting a Pixel 9 Pro or S24 Ultra camera experience, you'll be disappointed. That's not the focus of this phone after all. But for what it is, especially with that primary camera backed up by that really good gimbal, ASUS does a fantastic job here. The worst I could say is that some of the photos with that primary can come out looking a little overcooked with some HDR haloing in places. You also want to not look too closely around the edges of the frame in shots from ultra-wide mode, as noise and grain can quickly start to creep in lower light shots unless you're using the dedicated night mode. But with a 3x zoom level and a fairly high resolution, the telephoto definitely gives you that extra bit of versatility that might otherwise be missing in a gaming phone that isn't particularly photocentric. But actually my favorite camera feature in this phone is the video mode, simply because of the HDR video support combined with the extra stability that you get from that hardware gimbal. You can take some really impressive nighttime footage, even moving footage, from this setup that largely avoids the juddering and warbling that you see even in phones with larger image sensors. So the ROG Phone 9 Pro is a very fun piece of technology to use. At $1,200 US, this definitely isn't a cheap gadget, but if gaming is a big part of the way you use your phone every day, and you're the kind of person who values performance above, say, pro photography, it's an easy device to recommend. Now, it's definitely not for everyone. It's probably not even for me personally, if I'm honest. But for the right person, it does a great job of straddling the line between business and party, fun and getting stuff done. For the average workday, it doesn't look like a toy, and yet it packs all the power for those demanding titles you might be playing when you're off the clock. Let me know if you're tempted by the ROG Phone 9 Pro down in the comments. Stick around for more coverage as we get our hands on more Snapdragon 8 Elite phones in the coming weeks. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.